So how did Take Two second round of relationship come about?
Ah, I was very lucky. The pandemic happened. The festival that I went to each year didn't happen. That was 2020. July 2021, Croatia is on the amber list. And my friend who I'm going to be sharing an apartment with at that festival is like, do we go? Because it's not green. Do we still go? Like, do we take the chance? Do we go? I'm like, I haven't been out, and I haven't been dancing in the sun. I haven't been on a boat party for like 2 years. Like, I don't care if it's amber, I'm going. So she was like, okay, if you're going, I'm going, we're going. And, my plane tickets had already been booked. That wasn't an issue. And then it dawned on me, oh, if I'm going to this festival after 2 years, said person is going to be. I was like, oh dear, what do I do? Like, what happens now? Because we will run into each other at that festival. Like, even though there's thousands of people at that festival, there was no way that I was going to be at that festival and us not run into each other. And so the question is, do we run into each other, having not seen each other for nearly 2 years, in front of hundreds of people? Is there going to be a ringside audience to what's going to happen when these two run into each other? Or do I take control of the situation? And by that time, I'd already trained in delivering RTT. I had had a shed load of RTT hypnotherapy for myself. I'd had a shed load of coaching. I was like, I'm feeling good. I'm good. Like, I'm good. Like, nothing anyone can say or do can like affect this. I'm going to go to that festival. I'm going to be fine. And I'm going to put the ball in my court. And I'm going to reach out and say, let's have a short conversation before we run into each other in public so that we clear the air. I reached out, he responded, we set a date and a time for a video call. The 15-minute clear the air conversation ended up being a 2-hour conversation, because I didn't know that he had gone on to have even more therapy. I didn't know that he was still sober. He spoke differently.
Mm.
He used different words. He sounded very self-aware, very in control, very lucid. And after that 2-hour conversation, he said to me, would you like to have another conversation? I was like, no, thank you. I'm good. And then about a week later, I was like, I'm curious. I'm curious as to whether that 2-hour conversation was a performance or whether it was real. So we had another conversation. I'm guessing it was quite lengthy. And his words seemed to be consistent with the first conversation. And then he was very open and he said, what are we doing? Like, what is this conversation about? And without any pre-planning or anything, what came out of my mouth was, let's build and grow together.
And as you share that now, like the emotion is coming up, why do you feel it now so strongly, those words? What is it bringing up?
In that moment, in that conversation back then, the commitment to build and grow together, I entered into in good faith. I entered into it based on the premise that this person had done enough work on themselves that they were no longer harmful to me or unsafe for me. So the emotion that's coming up is that I entered that commitment with good faith. I don't think the other person. And if they did, enter that commitment to build and grow together with good intention, their subsequent behavior didn't match that intention.
Okay. Okay. How did it play out then? Firstly, how would you describe round two, take two of this relationship? The first was the roller coaster, a relationship and love like you'd never known. There was the addiction, it felt addictive. How would you describe the second round?
So the second round, we knew that we were going to meet at the same festival that we had met at in 2017, the same festival where he had cheated on me in 2018, the same festival that we had attended together in 2019. We were going to be there together in 2021, except that he almost wasn't there because he got COVID. And it was very touch and go. And the festival either runs, I think, either Wednesday to Wednesday or Thursday to Thursday. He eventually got out there on the Monday. And
Take your time.
he is a DJ.
Mm-hmm.
He was playing at that festival on the Monday night. We reunited Monday afternoon on the festival site. And then that night, he played his first set of that festival, closing the beach stage. And he said to me, before I play the last song of the set, I want you to come and dance next to me. And so I knew what the set time was. And then he glanced over at me to say it's time. So I went into the booth to dance next to him. And then he serenaded me to Stevie Wonder's ad. And when I say serenaded, it wasn't that he played the song and he looked at me and smiled. He literally, with his whole body, serenaded, faced me, sang the lyrics of the word, the lyrics of the song to me.
Mm.
And it's like always, like the mountain high, all that kind of stuff. And then it's like, until the day that you are me and I am you.
Mm.
And the crowd were going crazy because like the energy of that song, to end that song on the last song of the beach stage, like there's moonlight, it's just, the beach stage is open, it's outdoor, it's stunning.
Mm,
um the crowd were going insane, so there was this energy of like the song, him serenading me, the crowd, it was literally like sensory overload.
mm,
Like there were people screaming in the audience with their arms up high. There were people who were like, a, a lady came up to me afterwards. She was like, "That's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Like, does he do that to you all the time?" I'm like, "Nope, this is the first time." Like, this isn't my everyday existence. And the thing is, the people who were there at that festival either didn't know that we had spent 2 years separated, they didn't know that that was the first time that we had seen each other in 2 years. And so it was almost like there was this whole scenario being played out in front of hundreds of people, yet me and him had a secret.
mm,
We knew
mm,
that we'd only just seen each other for the first time in 2 years, a few hours before. And this was, in my mind, a confirmation of the commitment that we had made to build and grow together.
yeah. Like a starting point, like we're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, now in hindsight, I have very different words to describe that experience.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Um, how would you describe it now?
I'm going to say it and I'm going to go there. It was love for me.
Mm,
It was a performance. It was a grandiose gesture.
mm, yeah. I can identify with that. I've definitely been love bombed before. And in the moment, it feels amazing. It feels great. Like there's even a feeling of like, this is it. This is it, you know? But yes, I've definitely grown a lot from that where I'm like, don't watch what they say, watch what they do. Um, so how did it play out then, round two?
Round two, I felt that I had found my forever man, because, I was practicing RTT, hypnotherapy coaching. I'd gotten into meditation. I would send him meditations. He would listen to them. I'd given him a book. He read it and he highlighted it. Um, he was talking the same language as me, talking about becoming a coach himself. I was like, oh, like, this is it. Like, we are going to take over the world. We're going to change what yeah, we are going to change access to life-changing therapy for brown and black people around the world.
Mm,
Like, this is it. We're going to team up. We're going to help people in the music industry. We're going to help people in other industries. We're going to help couples. We are going to, like, literally, it was like the steamroller, the amount of ideas that we had, that
mm,
we were generating about the impact that we could have on the world by sharing our story, of going from dependent and addict and codependent and enabler to a powerhouse couple who are living their best lives, addiction free, healthy, respectful. That was going to be our story. And again, now in hindsight, I know that what happens in these scenarios is people with a certain personality type take on your personality and enmesh themselves with it so that you are under the illusion that you're really similar, that you're on the same page. And unfortunately, that is not representative of their true, authentic self. That is them generating a persona for you to believe in, to reel you in, to hook you in that web once again.
Mm, 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 mm. I've seen it before, and I've definitely seen people who do it unbeknownst to themselves. They do it completely unaware, whereas potentially others are a little bit more conscious of it and a little bit more, manipulative of it. Um, so how did this, how long was round two?
Um, say 15 months.
Okay, okay. And when, like, how were you feeling? Like, you went from feeling like, this is it. We are now the powerhouse couple. I've met my man. I'm doing work that I love. I have a relationship. I'm sharing my life with someone I love. Like, when did the cracks start to appear? Like, how did things, begin to play out that you were like, this is not the case?
In hindsight, there were red flags early on,
Okay.
little red flags early on.
What were they? Can you share some of those?
Yeah, silly things like, oh, Hema, I'm like vegetarian now, but they're not. What they mean is that they just eat more vegetables than before. Um, huh, just little inconsistencies, which at the time I overlooked. Thought maybe they just
Oh,
didn't, maybe they just said it differently. Maybe they said it differently. Maybe they didn't mean to use the word vegan. Maybe they didn't, maybe they just meant that they eat vegan options or vegetarian options that not they didn't mean to say that they were vegetarian. Because they clearly weren't. Um,
was it like little white lies, little kind of harmless lies?
so in my head, I'm like, it's just a little thing. It could be semantics. It could be that I just heard it wrong, that I misunderstood what they meant, or that they didn't say what they meant.
Mm,
And then there were like more and more little inconsistencies to the point where in May of this year there was a big inconsistency. And when we spoke about it was made very clear to me that these were my trust issues and that they were sabotaging an otherwise healthy relationship. So unless I got my shizzle together, there would be no relationship. And so at that point, I got even more therapy, I got even more coaching, all to do with trust, self worth, like all of this stuff, because I was like, if he isn't cheating, then I'm going to be ending the best thing that I've ever had,
mm,
or we're going to be ending the best thing that I've ever had. So again, I took all the responsibility on myself. And I thought, okay, yeah, like maybe I'm feeling unsafe with a safe person, and maybe I'm the one who's sabotaging this relationship. As time wore on, There were more and more inconsistencies. And yeah, recently in September, I was in the country where he lives, and there were problems at the airport. I was at the airport on my own, getting my flight home, and significant queues, and I just couldn't, like, it took me 2 hours to get my boarding pass scanned. Then it took me another hour, and I still hadn't even reached the point where they check your bags. Whilst I'm in that queue, I'm looking online, and then the message comes up, your flight is delayed, because obviously loads of people are in the same situation. And then eventually the message comes up, your flight has departed. I'm still in a queue. I'm not on the flight. In the meantime, though, in the hours that I'd spent at the airport in the queue, I had let them know by message what the situation was. I didn't hear anything back for an hour and a half. In that hour and a half, my mind is going to places. So I'm like, let me just phone. Let me reassure myself that what I think is happening is not happening. On the phone call, there's heavy breathing. On the phone call, I know that my worst fears are deferred. He is not alone. He dropped me off at the train station a few hours earlier. He was not alone when I phoned him whilst I was in that queue. And so then to find out that my flight has departed and I cannot get on another flight home, that my only choice is to go back, I was devastated. And I got back to his place. He had made me some food. And then we went to sleep. And in the morning, he asked me, do you trust? And I said, I went to sleep, didn't I? And he knows my pattern. If there's anything on my mind about anything, I don't sleep. And so I think he took that as a sign that if I had slept the night through, that I didn't know what had happened or what he had done.
Like on that phone call, there was no conversation where you're like, what were you doing? It was just a case of like, how did that play out? There was no chat about that, was there?
On the phone call, I was like, look, this is what the queue situation is like. It was a very matter of fact phone call. I didn't address it in the phone call.
Okay.
And then I think as I'm getting the train back from the airport, I'm like, what are you up to this evening? And the message that I received back was like, oh, when you phoned me, I was on the phone to my mum. That whole chestnut. And I didn't bring it up when I got back to his place. And I couldn't get a flight home the next day because it was the Queen's funeral. There were no flights home. So I had to spend another day there. And then the following day, he was due to be flying out somewhere. So we both went to the airport together, said our goodbyes. And I didn't bring it up then.
How were you feeling in your body at the time?
Whilst I was in the queue at the airport and I'm hearing the heavy breathing on the other end, literally it's like my world has fallen apart. Like I could have just died in that moment.
Mm. Okay. And then, you gather yourself, you get the train, you head back and you see him. How was it when you saw him that you know, when you returned back to his place, like after that phone call?
I'm not sure if I looked at him.
Mm,
I don't think I could.
okay. But you
I
just,
don't remember his eyes at all that night or the subsequent day. I don't remember looking,
mm, okay.
because I think if we had really looked at each other, we'd have both.
Mm, okay. Okay. So for you, you were just kind of going through the motions. It's nearly like there was a little bit of a self-protection thing going on. Just say sometimes it's like you nearly need to take yourself out of the situation before you can begin to process it properly. So, you know, you left him at the airport, you're both flying out. How did that play out? What happened?
Yeah, we were flying out to different destinations from different gates. That was all fine. Um, and I think even though I knew what I heard, I was very much in denial.
Mm,
Like, as in, this cannot be happening to me. This cannot be happening again. And this cannot be happening in this way. Like, it's brutal. Um, and that wasn't even when I ended the relationship.
mm,
3 weeks later, something happened. And then when I went to speak to him about it the following day, I was very joking and casual. And then I realized that I was gaslighting myself.
ooh,
So that was on the Thursday. On the Friday, that was when Susie was running her challenge and she asked us to make 3 commitments. And for some reason, even though nobody else in the Facebook group had gone live, shared a post, I was just like, I've got to do this. And the commitments were, I'm willing to finish what I start. I commit to doing things differently. And I commit to stepping into a bigger vision for myself and for my life.
mm,
And in that video that I did in the Facebook group, I went live. I just started flowing. I just started talking about this bigger vision for my life that I had never really written down anywhere before. The words fell out of me. And about an hour after that, I did that live, I just got this deep intuition that you have to end this relationship right now. The voice, the feeling, the sensation got bigger, louder, stronger. I was like, let me just sleep on this. Like, this is quite intense. What is going on here? And then the next day, I just said I was done.
mm,
And the response that I got was like, "Oh, we're not talking about this right now." Because we'd had a million conversations on trust before. I was like, cool, happy days. Like, I don't really want to have the same conversation again anyway. Um, and then because we'd said, we'd be speaking on the Sunday. Sunday comes around, nothing, no message, nothing. Sunday evening, I'm like, okay, if you'd like to have a conversation, a short conversation, that's cool. If you prefer not to have a conversation, that's also cool. Um, because in my mind, I knew that I didn't need proof, I didn't need evidence, I didn't need confirmation. Like I was actually done.
yeah,
I was just leaving that tiny bit of a door open just in case if he wanted to say anything. Um, and I didn't hear anything back. And then a few hours later, I get blocked on every single form of contact. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. That's very interesting. I would have thought, given all that we have been through, given the amount of therapy that we have both done, that we would both realize that it would be more adult and mature to have, like, you know, I understand this is the way it is what it is, wish you all the best, blah, blah, blah. And you know what? Even without that, I still have closure. The person I am today is not the person who was broken, who was left broken 3 years ago. The person who I am today has a voice. I stayed silent 3 years ago. The person who I am now has been open about my story. I have shared on social media that cheating is a form of self-sabotage, that I understand about trauma responses and coping mechanisms, and cheating is a coping mechanism. It's because we all have a human need for connection, and cheating provides that quick fix. However, what cheating does is it destroys long-term connection with a person that you're supposedly with long-term. So it's like, a bite your nose to spite your face kind of situation. So I wrote a post about, yeah, why cheating is a form of self-sabotage. I then wrote a post about how and why I'm grateful to have been cheated on. And then another about how I've been able to move from pain to peace so quickly. And these are all lessons learned from having received a load of therapy and coaching, from having trained in RTT hypnotherapy, understanding the rules of the mind, understanding about addiction, understanding about trauma responses. I don't hate him. I do not hate him at all.
Mm. He's seeking for love like we all are, but sometimes we don't realize that we're actually disconnecting from it instead of connecting to it, like, yeah. So like I can completely understand, and I love that you're even sharing that it is possible to go through these kind of experiences with someone and love ourselves enough to not hold on to, the anger, the hate, the resentment, because that actually closes us off from moving forward and then creating the kind of relationship that we do want, like to moving forward in love. Um, Now there's a couple of things that you spoke about, and I just think they're so. It's just an interesting topic. So I'm going to get your views on it. But one thing I will say, just from watching, I was in that Facebook group when you posted that video, and you and I had kind of been, messaging before. And obviously we'd been in the mastermind, but it did feel like you weren't fully, like there was a bit of you holding back, hiding. Whereas that post, and I remember commenting on it, I was like, Hema, like it was so powerful to see you. And there was even a little bit of spoken word in there. So I was like, she is letting herself be seen. Like it was so powerful. And just how like vision is like, when we connect, and vision is very different to a plan is like, right, when I do this, it's like A to B to C, and a plan is, mind made. But when we vision, we're connecting with that part of ourselves that can move into the unknown, that's connected higher. And when we are, seeing through the eyes of soul, of an unlimited consciousness, we vision. And vision is such a high energy, but it has unbelievable purification, implications, that when you say your yes to that, like obviously you naturally start to purify and declutter, and you literally decluttered what was going to stop you and hold you back from realizing and bringing this vision to life. And I see it all the time, that when a woman up levels, everything up levels. Like, relationships change, they get better. Because I know sometimes it's a fear for some women that when they have a loving relationship, they're afraid to up level, because they're like, what if this negatively impacts the loving relationship I'm in? But when you're up leveling truly with love, everything can only get better, like it evolves like that. But it's the trust piece that I find so interesting. And I remember years ago, I'm not okay. Have you ever heard of Lee Harris? Okay, Lee Harris. He's lovely. He's lovely. He was this lovely guy from the UK. And I first came across him years ago. It was like 2007. And he used to do channeling back then, but like now he's completely blown up, like he'd be globally known. But I had a couple of one-to-one sessions with him back in the day when he was 70 pounds. He's definitely not that price now. Um, but I remember listening to him speak on trust, and it was so eye-opening for me because again, when you think you're being loving, like when we have this warped, shadowy perception of love that isn't really true to love, it's like we can use certain concepts against ourselves, like, oh, I just need to be trusting, I'm not trusting enough, that it's a verb. But how he explained it to me was that it was a relationship that we develop with ourselves, because I've been in those situations where I'm getting the hunch, I'm like, something's not right. And then, I'm like, oh, I just need to trust more. That's how we grow and trust. I just need to trust more. Like it's a verb. When it's like, no, it's a relationship that we develop with ourselves. And when we come into relationship with trust ourselves, we have it with ourselves first and foremost. And then we're like, is this person worthy of trusting? Is this person worthy of my trust? Like before, it's this blind thing. And I'll often hear it, sometimes with clients when they're in a predicament, it's like, I need to trust more. And it's like, okay, let's talk about that it's a relationship. But what I see in your story was this ongoing development of this relationship with trust.
100%. Um, the irony is that I had delivered Facebook challenges all about like becoming a fearless action taker. And day 4 was the power of intuition. So I thought I knew all of this stuff. So when it was reflected back to me earlier this year, Hema, this is your stuff, you've got to deal with it. I was like, okay, I hold my hand up. Let me just deal with it. And I remember like even a few months earlier, the question was asked, why don't you trust me? I was like, it's about being trustworthy. And so I don't know how and when it happened. There's no defining moment, but it was that whole thing of, am I trusting myself? Like I'm doing all of this work on trust, like all of these different affirmations, these different somatic practices, all of this stuff. So I am doing everything within my power to trust. And then there's still a disconnect. And so then if it's not me, like maybe it's not me. Maybe somebody else is portraying a version of themselves that is not true. And maybe somebody who has been in a lot of therapy knows all the right words to say at the right time to gaslight me in an even more sophisticated way.
Mm.
And maybe, Hema, it's time to take off the blinkers and stop falling for people's potential and really, really look at what is.
Yeah, the power of what is. And I love what you shared, using all these tools, because the personal development is great. We have this toolkit and we can use it, but no tool can replace the truth. And that's what you stepped into.
That could be a t-shirt right there, Brona. No tool can replace the truth because we know in the core of our being. And so when I had noticed that in that conversation on that Thursday night before doing that video in Susie's group, that I was gaslighting myself, I was like, no, I do not accept this. I do not accept that I am gaslighting myself. This is not going to happen again. With or without evidence, I am done.
Yeah. What did
The,
that look like when you say you were gaslighting yourself? Was it just with yourself or was it in a conversation with him?
yeah, in a conversation. So it was like, like, yeah, this is what I think that you were doing, and this is how it sounded, and this is how it sounded like you were behaving. Um, and I was like, yeah, I was playing it down. And then the response that I got was like, Hema, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. And it was a repetition. There was no actual dialogue. It was a repetition of a phrase, which then is another red flag, because that's someone who has nowhere to go with the analysis of the situation other than to repeat. Um, and so, yeah, there wasn't a conversation to be had as such, because I'm relaying how I perceived a situation and how my perception of that situation could be wrong, and the other person isn't entering into any kind of exploration of that situation.
Mm.
And so the other thing that had happened around that time is that I delivered a 2-hour workshop to somebody else's coaching group, all on the ABC of self-love. And the B of self-love is boundaries.
Mm.
And it just was, there was something that, I was prepared the handout. I was like, yeah, I've got this beautiful graphic. And then it was just like, am I practicing this myself?
Mm.
Am I practicing self-love? Am I practicing what I preach? And so then, with the whole doing the video where I'm talking about being committed to stepping into a bigger vision of myself, and then the thoughts of like, am I loving myself as much as I could? How are my boundaries? And then it was just like literally like this collision, this explosion of, like you say, the truth. The truth was, I had to end that relationship right there.
Mm. Yeah. Describe to me in a couple of words how you feel now about yourself and life since you finished that relationship.
The overwhelming sense that I had initially was peace.
I love that because the Course in Miracles describes love is peace.
And so by choosing to love myself, by choosing to implement boundaries, I was so at peace. And it's very interesting that you mentioned about power and witnessing my journey since that decision. Um, because I have a formula. I have a formula that I've been using and talking about and sharing on social media. I shared it like literally minutes before our conversation today, about how the missing piece is peace. That in life, we are told, find your passion, pursue your purpose, and then you will have power.
Mm.
Without the foundation of peace, it means nothing. Without the foundation of peace, it's like a house of cards waiting to fall down. Without the foundation of peace, it is imposter syndrome.
Yeah, yeah. And even, because power is a big part of the work that I do. And what I've learned is there's power and shadow power. And a lot of people, when they're discussing power, is like, say, oh, power's in the wrong hands. And I'm like, power can never be in the wrong hands. Shadow power can, where, you know, I think of certain politicians where it's the outside in. They need all these things to big themselves up. It's power over instead of power with. So when I'm talking about power, I'm talking about it in its, whole form, where to be in your power is peace. Like when I'm in my power, yeah, for me, especially being a highly sensitive person, I really feel it. And there's peace, but there's that, it's contentment. There's a real sense of contentment where you're like, I am comfortable in my skin. And like, that is just, money can't buy that shit.
feeling safe,
Mm, mm,
trusting your choices and decisions and actions,
mm,
trusting that you cannot be talked out of your version of events,
mm,
that what you experience is what you experience without having someone to put words in your mouth to say, no, that's not what happened. That's not what you heard. That's not what was said. That, you know,
mm,
all of that. And yeah, and it's very interesting you talk about power in that way. A diagram that I came across recently was about when someone who is anxiously attached and is in a relationship with someone who is avoidantly attached. That's where that kind of codependency relationship happens. And the form of power in that situation is control.
mm,
When two people who are securely attached, the form of power in that situation is cooperation.
mm, It's connection. I do you know what do you know what I love about this? And I have to big you up on this one. Is there can be a perception that when someone steps in to become a coach or to do healing work in the world, that I've often had it where, I'll get myself into a kerfuffle because I'm part of the teach and learn. Like, I'm all about integrity. I'm like, look, I'm going to teach you this, but I am learning this as well. And that's how I share. I share from that place. But there are some people who are like, you should know this already. I remember traveling around India, and I had been traveling for so long, I was feeling a little bit ungrounded. And I remember trying to make a decision, and one girl turned around. She was like, shouldn't you be okay with making decisions? Like, you're a coach. And I just remember being like, F you, you know what I mean? So what I love is that you are teaching and learning. And to me, these are the most powerful teachers and guides because the empathy that comes, as well as the integrity, like, it's just powerful. So thank you for that, Hema. And thank you so much for sharing your story as well, because I really do feel it's powerful when sometimes when someone walks us through, well, this is how I felt at this stage, and this is how I felt. Like, it really brings it to life for people where they might be in a similar situation and they're like, hang on a second, like, this thing maybe that I've been avoiding dealing with, or this thing, like, maybe I've actually been slightly gaslighting myself. Like, it's so powerful. Like, awareness is power. And I really do feel that there will be people who can benefit from hearing your story. One last thing before we go. What kind of love? Like, you've been in the stable 12 years, okay? You've been in the roller coaster love like I've never known, ups and downs, mountains and valleys. What are you inviting in next? What are you open to now? What are you available for?
I'm available for truth, I'm available for honesty, and I'm available for real.
Mm,
If there
real.
was one word to describe the second time round, I would say illusion.
Okay.
I'm not available for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Where there's the picture, it's like the picture is there, but it's underneath it. Like, and that sense, like, I am so grateful to be where I am, having learned the lessons I have, because one of the things that I now know, like, you know, and I know it's true and I trust myself, is you can feel it when someone's energy is there, even if they're not in the room, even if they're in another country. You can feel when their energy is there with you, but you can feel it when it's not. I've had experiences of both, and all I can say, like, and for me, I'm going to say men because that's who I'm into. Um, when I've been with men where you can just feel the respect, you feel the reverence, you feel the space that they're holding, and I feel so safe and seen. And what I love about this kind of a man is that, say, when I say no, there's none of this, the way some guys can be like no, but then they're like kind of like you can feel their energy is like, well, she's saying no, but I'm going to try and get her straight. And I feel that. And I think I kind of, I normalized that. I was like, that's just men. But now I'm like, no, that's really shitty behavior. I'm not available for that. Like, I love feeling safe and I really open up when I'm with that kind of a man. So I'm very grateful for that. But Emma, like, when two or more join together and hold a vision, it has to come to fruition. So I look forward to hearing all about your real love. And if anybody wants to come find you and your work, what's your website? Share a little bit.
The best way to find me is Reset and Rediscover on Instagram or Facebook. I do have one of the most common surnames in the world, which is why I don't really use my name that much. So Reset and Rediscover, the word and I think many years ago, I probably should have claimed that as a TikTok handle. No doubt somebody else has got that already and is using it. So yeah, Instagram or Facebook at Reset and Rediscover.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Brona.
Thank you.